From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I am your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. This is Andre Johnson.
Junior. Do
not forget the Junior. It's very important to remember the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, review. If you're watching us on YouTube, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button, get the notification. But when we drop that, fire content. And also, hello to the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Glad you have found us here. Hope you're enjoying all the content that we have on this beautiful network, wherever you are watching the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, because it's everywhere. It's all over the Gulf South. So thank you if you're in that number. How you feeling today?
I'm feeling good because today is the culmination of weeks of work.
We've been talking, yes.
We're finally in the top 5 of your Ranking the Saints countdown. We're about to get into it. I'm sure you guys have an idea of some of the names we're about to go here. But before we get to that, Sean, remind the people of 6 through 20.
Yeah. I know y'all agree with everything. I say that often. Time for my top 5. I do this every year. So let's go. Let's read 20 through 6. All right, number 20, I have Foster Moreau. 19, Brandon Cooks. 18, Devon Gottschall. 17, Taliese Fuaga. 16, Cam Jordan. 15, Carl Granderson. 14, Rashid Shaheed. 13, Chase Young. 12, Pete Werner. 11, Alante Taylor. 10, Juwan Johnson. 9, Cesar Ruiz. 8, Justin Reed. 7, Tyrann Mathieu. And 6, Brian Brzee, which brings us to our top 5 now. How do you want to do this? Do you want to set me up with the number and I'll just say the name, or do you want to say the name and I'll just go with it?
I'll say the name for you.
There we go.
We've got a wide receiver starting on the offense. Your number 1 wide receiver for the Saints, Christopher Olave.
That's how we start the top 5 with number 5, Chris Olave. Chris Olave has the skill set to be either a high-end top 2 in the league, or can he get to 1 status? I think where they drafted him, I think it would be slightly disappointing if he's not able to get to 1 status or 1A status. I think right now we're both comfortable in saying his skill set merits consideration for strong 2. Is that good enough? Probably not. They probably want him to be number 1. I don't know if he's got 1. But I do think he's got the skill set to be very productive in this new system. I do think he's got the skill set to at least flirt with the idea of being a 1. But for these purposes here, for this ranking, he's a top 5 player. Yep. He's a top 5 player on the Saints roster, regardless of how you think of him as a 1 or a 2 or in the hierarchy of NFL receivers or his contract coming up, whatever. He's a top 5 player on this roster. What I need to see from him, a couple things. A little bit more route development. I think that's getting there. A little bit more run after catch. I think that's getting there. A little bit more, this is some on him, some will not, focus on durability. The concussions are very, very scary. High passes are going to happen. Sometimes it's a dirty hit that knocks you out. Sometimes it's a bad throw that leaves you vulnerable. Sometimes there are things you can do as a receiver to protect yourself. How does Kellen Moore treat Chris Olave? Because right now, his best attribute is running through that second level intermediate routes, the 11 to 20 middle of the field. But that's where it's most dangerous for him. So does he stay on the outside the numbers? Does he get more downfield? Does he get more short? I think those are all valid questions. And I think 2025 is going to be a big year for him because hopefully we'll start finding out some answers without incomplete data. Hopefully we get a full bill of health, clean bill of health. He's available for the majority of the season. And hopefully this is a guy that is not just barely crossing the 1,000-yard threshold. Let's talk 1,500 yards. Let's talk 10, 12 touchdowns. Let's talk, we got a plan for that guy. Because right now, I don't know if he scares every DB in the league. Maybe some, but not every DB in the league.
Yeah, I mean, he's number 5 on this list, but for me, he's the number 1 candidate that I need to see more from. Mm-hmm. You know, he is a good receiver. I'm waiting to see him consistently be a great receiver. You know, 8 starts last year, 400 yards, 1 touchdown. Even in 8 starts, that's not great numbers. You look at the season before, he touched on it. He's barely touching 1,000 yards with a handful of touchdowns. And I understand He has caught passes from, the Derek Carrs and Andy Daltons of the world, short stint with a Spencer Rattler, maybe a little bit with Jameis, but Chris Olave not playing with elite quarterbacks, that's not exclusive to him. When you look across the league, you've got receivers that are thriving with quarterbacks who aren't necessarily elite. Look at the New York Giants last year. Daniel Jones stinks. Tommy DeVito has not been it. And even Malik Neighbors with them was able to go for, 1,300. Look at what Brian Thomas Jr. was able to do with an awful Trevor Lawrence last year. So despite not necessarily having elite quarterback play, I need Chris Olave to break out. But I think that Kellen Moore is the coach that can bring it out of him, because he talked to us during minicamp and he mentioned, last year he wanted to work on run after the catch. And he kind of got to do that a little
bit better at it, yeah.
Clint Kubiak system, but he wasn't on the field enough to really make it stick. This year he wants to focus on stretching the field, because Chris Olave is not slow.
No.
Chris Olave has speed, but when we think about the deep threat on this team, we don't think about him, we think about Rashid Shaheed. Chris Olave believes he's also capable of doing that, so I'd like to see more run after the catch. I'd like to see him protect himself more, and I'd like to see him get down the field and be able to get behind defenses, because this isn't 2006. In 2006, 1,000 receiving yards, that was great. Today, with the rules in the game, the way that they play towards the offense and towards the receiver, the way the league has changed because it's a passing league, and the fact that you added a 17th game. Just touching 1,000 yards, that's not the gold standard for me anymore in 2025. If Chris Olave is going to be an elite wide receiver one, because he's going to want to get paid like one in a couple years, I need to see 13, 14, 1,500 yards, double-digit touchdowns.
There's a couple of things you said there, but I want to make this point based off what you said. He had a little bit of Rattler last year.
Right.
How many games did they overlap? It wasn't a lot. Okay. But his experience with him is not a lot, okay? A lot of Derek Carr, a lot of Andy Dalton, a lot of Jameis Winston. Jameis, Andy, and Derek are not elite quarterbacks. But I can promise you those three are veteran quarterbacks, and he was the young guy. I can promise you those three, as they stand right now, are closer to that kind of quarterback than what he's going to have this year, okay? My point is, he can't just be good for himself. He's got to be good because he is not going to have a veteran quarterback this year. He is going to have a guy that's either never won a game or never started a game as his quarterback. They are going to need him to make big plays. They're going to need him to sometimes make the difficult catch. The throw is not always going to be perfect. The situation, he may misidentify something. Until those guys get their feet under him, they're going to need a veteran receiver. Chris Olave is now a veteran. He is now he's what I classify as a young veteran. I know he's kind of got that California cool about him, but I think there needs to be a growth from his physical game, but also the not being afraid to step out in front and say, if I'm the leader of this room, I need to be the leader of the room both on the field, in the media room, but I also have to help my quarterback, something I've never been asked to do before, because honestly, he always had veteran quarterbacks. Now he's going to have young guns at that position, and they're going to need number 12.
Yep, and I agree. But he has done enough to land at number 5 on your ranking the Saints countdown. So now we go to the other side of the ball for the only defensive player in the top 5, linebacker Demario Davis.
Linebacker Demario Davis. We talked about him a couple weeks ago just with the contract year, 36 years old. Every time you think, okay, we're finally going to start showing some signs of age, he's found the fountain of youth. One of my favorite players in the locker room, one of our favorite players to talk to. He's still incredibly productive, even at this age. It's so hard to be that productive at that age, at that position. He doesn't miss a snap. There's no rotation. He does not come off the field. He doesn't miss a snap. He is never hurt. Knock on wood. You could probably put him higher on this list. But for right now, I'm putting him in at number 4, Demario Davis, leading tackler, heart and soul of the defense. And I'll take it one step further. Like, when they brought him here in 2018, no one thought he was going to still be here in 2025. Let's just be honest.
Correct.
Okay, you don't think that at that age, because that was his third contract he signed at that point. But not only has he been here, he has been productive, durable, probably the most underrated linebacker in the NFL. And given some of the problems they've had around him, he has saved them.
Yeah.
because they haven't had to worry about this quarterback of the defense position since 2018. Think of how much of a luxury that is. So for all those reasons, Demario Davis is in the top 5. He checks in at number 4.
The word that you're going to hear me say a lot today is irreplaceable. And I think Demario Davis has made himself irreplaceable on this Saints defense. He ran away with the lead for total tackles last year, 44 tackles ahead of second place. He's great in stuffing the run. He can get out there and cover the passer when you need him to. And just doing all of that at the age of 36, I can't imagine what this defense would look like if Demario Davis wasn't in the middle of it. And we saw, little snippets of it when he's in the rare times in which he's gotten injured. But Demario Davis at number 4 for everything that he affects on this team. He's arguably the best defensive player on the squad with him and, Brian Brzee in my eyes. And for him, I just hope he keeps playing. I remember when Tom Brady and Peyton Manning were getting towards the end, they both joked, hey, I'm just going to play until I suck. If Demario's going to play until he sucks, then he might have a few more years because the age does not match the production because he is outperforming what you expected when you brought him to New Orleans. He's outperforming what you would expect out of a 36-year-old middle linebacker, and I think he's definitely earned that 4th spot.
He definitely has. And, I remember talking to him back in 2018 when he first got here. I was like, the best compliment I can give you is you just got here, but it feels like you've been here a long time. I remember he talked about how much being back, he's from Mississippi, being in the South, the culture just fit, and he just took over that leadership role so quickly and really was a catalyst for that mini contender run they had from, I guess he wasn't here in 17, but 18 through 20 when he was here. So, now that he's been here. So, I'm sure he wants to finish things out on a high note, but look, he's not going to fall far on my list. So he comes in at number 4. What's next?
Well, we've talked about an offensive player. We've talked about a defensive player. Haven't talked special teams, but this next guy is all of the above. He is whatever he wants to be. Jack of all trades. Number 7, Taysom Hill coming in at number 3.
Number 3 is number 7, Taysom Hill. I love Taysom. Love Taysom.
How could you not?
Gonna be 35 years old. Want him to be healthy for this season. Want him to. I don't want to see him limp his way out the door. I think this is very possibly the last year of Taysom Hill in New Orleans. Sometimes I don't quite think Saints fans truly grasp how unique this player is. And I don't think they truly grasp how much his skill set, which frankly, he didn't even know he had until he got here. Offensive coordinator, offensive coach after offensive coach, and quarterbacks have leaned on to help in terms of deciphering matchups. Not only that, not every good offensive player has this. He has this. That is the ability to take over a game. Some guys just have the ability to take over the game. Cleveland game last year, Seattle game a couple years ago, Carolina in 2023 on Monday Night Football. And think of how they've had, since Drew has retired, how mediocre it's been at times, how many issues they've had offensively at times, and just think how many times what they're trying to do is not working, and Taysom comes to the rescue. Similar to Demario, kind of saves the defense a little bit. Taysom has done that a lot for the offensive side of the ball. And when you consider it was basically a nothing waiver wire acquisition based off of a practice squad candidate receiver they were looking at. And they said, well, wait, who's this guy running around? So where all of a sudden he just shows up on a kickoff return, running down a kickoff one day, like, who is number 7? From that day on, he's become one of the most unique players in the NFL. This was not the way his career he thought was going to go.
Yeah.
Especially after 4 years of 4 straight season-ending injuries in college. He's on borrowed time. It's all a bonus now for him. So I think you have gotten so much more out of what you could have possibly envisioned from what started as a very minuscule bottom of the transaction wire sheet waiver wire acquisition to the most unique player in the NFL. Taysom Hill deserves his spot at number 3.
I call Demario Davis irreplaceable because I don't think anybody on the Saints can replicate what he can do on their defense. I don't think there's anybody on the planet who can replicate what Taysom Hill does on a football field. He will do whatever you ask him to. I remember we in Carolina with Juan Kincaid, Alvin Kamara was suspended for the first 3 games a couple years ago. Jamal Williams goes down, so you just throw Taysom back there at running back. You know, new offensive coordinator last year. You throw Taysom at fullback, and he's out there blocking and, you know, still doing this whole QB power thing. And then you've got him at tight end. Last season, when the receivers started dropping, you line him up out wide. You put him on special teams. He's blocking punts. He's making tackles. He had a 40-yard kick return last season. I mean, he just does everything. And like you mentioned, he's able to completely take over games. You mentioned some of the ones he's taken over, but I challenge you to go back and look at that Atlanta game from week 4 this season in ATL. Taysom Hill scores twice in the first half of that game. The Saints are riding clean. Then all of a sudden he gets hurt right before the second half. And the night and day contrast between the first half offense with Taysom and the second half offense without him shows you how valuable he is to this team. I don't think there's anything you can do to replace what he does here. And if you look at the numbers, nothing's going to jump out at you. But when you watch
his career
the tape,
is not a numbers guy, right?
I mean, the tape speaks for itself on max volume.
There's a couple of things as well, because we know Taysom Hill now down here, Saints player, but I remember watching him at BYU. Yeah. This guy was a Heisman contender at quarterback. This guy had visions of being an NFL starting quarterback. Those visions got derailed. He would not have had this kind of career had he stuck with the quarterback route and probably been a backup quarterback, spot started throughout his career. So my point is, it took obviously a vision of I think it was Westhoff, Peyton always credits, but also that's not easy for a player to change positions like that, especially a quarterback, to where you're doing a lot of dirty work, and he fully embraced it to the max. And that's why he's had the career that he's had. So Taysom Hill, number 3, probably one of the most respected players in the locker room as well. All right, who's next?
Up next, we're going to the trenches, the place where the New Orleans Saints love to draft, and this is one of their best draft picks in recent memory, center Eric McCoy.
Eric McCoy comes in at number 2 because he's in the prime of his career, and he just proved how valuable he was last year when he was not available. Let's not forget, we were all riding high after those first 2 games last year.
Man.
I mean, and once again, week 3 proved to be the turning point. Eric McCoy is out after 2 snaps. They lose that game. They had a chance to win that game, and they never recovered. He was out for a long stretch. He came back. He was out again. They just did not have anyone that could replace what he did. They still don't have anyone that can replace what he does, but I think they're a little bit better to handle an injury. Speaking of injuries, I hope he's able to avoid some injuries this year, because I think that's starting to catch up to him a little bit. But I think it's telling. He's been a day 1 starter since he's been here, since 2019. He's the only second-round pick on the starting 5 right now along the offensive line. And yet he's the unquestioned leader. He's a guy that's when you don't have him, you see what happens. And when you do have him, you see what happens. I know you got some numbers to prove it. But, I could have went a lot of different directions in this top 5. Maybe you scramble up Davis, Taysom, and McCoy. But to me, given his age, given his production, given how valuable he's been when he's on the field and how much they struggle when he's off the field, to me, Eric McCoy is worthy of the second best player on the Saints roster.
It's rare across the league where you would look at a team and say their second best player is a center, but with the Saints it feels fitting, because Eric McCoy showed, I told y'all the word of the day would be irreplaceable. Mm-hmm. He showed last season that he was irreplaceable. 4-2 the Saints were in the games that Eric McCoy played. I'm not counting the game against the Eagles where he goes out after 2 snaps. I'm saying he didn't play that game because he really didn't get to because of that injury. Saints won 5 games last year, 4 of them where Eric McCoy were playing. They were 1-11 when Eric McCoy wasn't on the field, because the center is the heart of the offensive line. It's not just snapping the ball. It's looking, especially a veteran center like Eric McCoy, who can look at the defensive line, who's making adjustments across the O-line so that the quarterback has to, because he also has the ability to view the game in that way. Eric McCoy has always been huge for the Saints, but sometimes you don't appreciate something until it's gone. And when he was gone last year, it was not pretty across that Saints offense.
Yeah,
so
and look,
McCoy number 2.
Yeah, look, I do this list every year, and he's been on the team since 2019, so he's been on this list every year. This is as high as I've gotten him, and
didn't get much higher.
I think it's worthy, and I think if you're listening right now, I think you are watching right now, you probably understand why. Eric McCoy is just when he went down, the season went down with it last year. Let's just be, all things being equal, I guess obviously Derek Carr as well, but when that injury happened, it just felt like they never were on solid footing ever again. So Eric McCoy checking in at number 2, which brings us to number 1.
Number 1, I called Eric McCoy the heart of the offense. If he's the heart, Alvin Kamara is the blood that gets everything going, because he is the number 1 player in your ranking the Saints countdown, the starting running back.
Number 1, number 41, Alvin Kamara once again checks in. Number 1, the top spot, back-to-back years. Alvin Kamara, best player on the team. Best player on the team. I mean, if you're looking at this roster right now, just go look at it. Even going into year 8 as a 30-year-old running back, still the best player on the team. And this is after some sluggish, call it, years. The Saints need to do Alvin Kamara a favor this year. They've got to find a quality 2. They've got to find a quality 2. But he has stepped up, and sometimes you don't always know what Alvin's thinking. Sometimes he's a little bit of a mystery. You're not sure what he's thinking. But it felt like the last time we spoke to him, you were in the locker room when he spoke. Yeah. A little more refreshed. Changes happened. They got an offensive-minded coach. This is a guy they turn to. This is a guy that's consistent. This guy can rushing, receiving. He's the most dynamic player on the team. If you are an opposing defensive coordinator, you're looking at across the Saints, who am I stopping?
41.
I guarantee you, number 1 is 41. That's the number 1 player you are trying to stop. I'm not sure. Look, the gap between 1 and 2, I think, is up there. I think Kamara, not because of Eric McCoy, because that's how good Alvin Kamara is. And until someone proves otherwise, they are not dethroning Alvin Kamara as the number 1 player on our Ranking the Saints countdown. Disagree if you like. Who do you have at number 1 if you don't have Alvin Kamara? So Alvin Kamara checks in at number 1, our top spot.
I can see that, but, looking at the beginning of last season, it was kind of to the point where people were about to start saying Alvin Kamara is washed because he was coming off 2 down seasons for him. So it was kind of teetering, is he over or does he still have a lot in the tank? Ain't no question. That tank is full right now. Alvin Kamara made an impact despite all of the nonsense going on with the Saints, whether it was Carr, whether it was Hayner, whether it was Rattler, whether Eric McCoy was there, whether he wasn't there, no matter who was across the offensive line, no matter who was the head coach, no matter who was the quarterback, with all the injuries, the one constant spot, the one guy who managed to have his fingerprints on every single game that he played, which was most of them, was Alvin Kamara. The numbers say that. You watch the tape, it says that. Alvin Kamara is still up there with Taysom Hill, probably as the most dynamic players on the offense, but he's asked to do a lot more than Taysom Hill is asked to do, and I'll use my word of the day one more time, irreplaceable. I think if you took all the other running backs behind AK on the depth chart and combined them into one, I still don't think they can do what AK can do on the football field heading into the age of 30.
And look, this is also important to point out. We broke down our contract years a couple weeks ago. Saints players going to contract years. Technically, Alvin Kamara is not going into a contract year. But the way the contract is set up, they could probably get out of it relatively inexpensive after this year. He's going to turn 30. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying it is or is not going to happen. My point is, though, when a back hits 30, you better start appreciating those guys, because honestly, not really sure how much longer those guys have left, especially with the team that drafted them. Now, some guys hit 30, still going strong. Derrick Henry comes to mind. And maybe Alvin could be that guy because of his skill set, especially if they take some of his workload off and they're able to find a second back. I think he can still be, or he will be, a dynamic player. So it's a pivotal year for Alvin because that infamous thing where he drove off at minicamp and he ended up getting the contract extension. He's good for this year. Yeah. Next year he's still under contract, but the way it's set up, it could be a season where it could be done. So Alvin Kamara, you never know. This could be the last year for 41 in New Orleans.
Now, I agree. Now, I'm going to go ahead and beat some of the comments to it because you can't talk about, the people who got it without talking about the people who can't. You got to bring up some of the snubs, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. Why isn't Spencer Rattler in the top 20 of the Saints? Did he not earn it with his play last year? I got y'all. I'm going to ask the question. Sean, why isn't he in there?
Look, I want to put him on this list. He's just not he's not in the top 20 right now. Neither quarterback is. And it's very hard to not put a quarterback in your top 20 list when you talk about a professional football team. But I don't put rookies, so I'm not putting Tyler Shuck. And I don't put and Spencer Rattler is a second-year pro, fifth-round pick that had some flashes last year. But despite, frankly, a lot of opportunities for a rookie fifth-round pick, I didn't see enough consistency for 4 quarters of a game. Like, I never felt the game feeling like, yeah, the Saints lost, but Rattler was awesome. I felt like he had like spurts, half here, half there, but didn't necessarily have a full game. Now, if Rattler wins the competition and he plays 17 games as the starter, and it's obvious he's the guy going forward, I guarantee you he'll be on this list next year. Yep. But I can't put it right now. I don't even think he's going to be the starter right now. How could I put him on this list?
That's fair.
So I know there's a lot of Rattler fans out there, and I want to believe. And when he's the starter, maybe I will start believing. But for right now, I think, look, let's just keep where it's at. He's not the top 20. And if you really just look at the numbers and who's on this list, I think that's a pretty reasonable assessment.
Yeah, he just wasn't consistent enough. I mean, at the end of the day, he had some good moments early against Tampa, both times they played, but 2 interceptions against the Bucs in the Dome. He had 2 interceptions against the Raiders. He got shut out on primetime football by the Packers. Primetime football again against the Broncos. That game was painful. He didn't score a touchdown in that game.
Yep.
Jake Hayner had to come in and do it. So we saw a little bit, but we haven't seen enough from Spencer Rattler to put him here, because at the end of the day, you can make all the excuses you want to. 0-7 in the games that he played. Now, if things go right for Rattler, he beats out Shuck, and he finds a way onto this list next year. But right now, I can see putting 20 people ahead.
Look, I guarantee you, if he's a starter this year, and he's the starter going forward, he will be on this list next year. I guarantee you that will happen. I promise you. You can bookmark it, because that would have meant he is the starting quarterback and done well enough to not just win the job, but also fight off a contender in next year's draft. Yep. So that's a long way away, though. All right, we got to get out of here. For Andre Johnson Jr., I'm Sean Fazende. Hope you enjoyed the rankings. Hope you enjoyed the countdown. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.